The morning mist hung low over the ancient stone walls of St. Bartholomew's Abbey as groundskeepers made their final preparations for what would be the most significant celebration in nearly a millennium. Margaret Thompson, the Abbey's head curator, stood in the medieval courtyard clutching her clipboard with trembling hands. Today marked exactly 950 years since the Abbey's founding, and their Royal Highnesses the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge would be arriving within the hour. The flowers need adjusting near the main entrance. Margaret called to the florist team, arranging white roses and purple lupins around the Gothic archway. Every detail had to be perfect. This wasn't just any anniversary celebration. It was a once-in-a-lifetime milestone that would be broadcast live to millions of viewers across the Commonwealth. Father Michael O'Brien, the Abbey's elderly priest who had served the community for 37 years, emerged from the chapel wiping his hands on a worn cloth. His weathered face showed both excitement and nervousness as he approached Margaret. "The choir is ready, and we've tested the sound system 3 times. The children from the local school have been practicing their welcome song for weeks." Margaret nodded, checking her watch. The security team had been sweeping the grounds since dawn, their presence discreet but thorough. Detective Inspector Sarah Walsh coordinated with her team through a small earpiece, ensuring every possible entrance and exit route had been secured. The Abbey's peaceful atmosphere contrasted sharply with the underlying tension of hosting such distinguished guests. "Ma'am, the advance team has just arrived," announced James Fletcher, the Abbey's volunteer coordinator, as a convoy of black vehicles pulled through the ancient gates. Royal Protection officers stepped out first, their trained eyes scanning the surroundings with professional efficiency. They moved with quiet authority, speaking in hushed tones as they conducted their final security assessment. The Abbey itself stood majestically against the cloudy English sky, its Norman towers and Gothic windows telling the story of centuries past. Built in 1073 by Benedictine monks, the structure had witnessed the rise and fall of kings, survived the dissolution of monasteries under Henry VIII, and endured 2 world wars. Today, it would add another chapter to its remarkable history. Local residents had begun gathering outside the perimeter hours earlier, many carrying small Union Jack flags and handmade signs welcoming the royal couple. Mrs. Eleanor Davies, an 83-year-old widow who lived in the neighboring village, had positioned herself at the front of the crowd despite the early morning chill. "I've been coming to this Abbey since I was a little girl," she told the BBC reporter interviewing spectators. "My grandmother was married here in 1923, and my own wedding took place in this very chapel 45 years ago." The media presence was substantial, but carefully managed. Television crews from major networks had set up their equipment in designated areas, while photographers with telephoto lenses waited patiently for the moment when the royal car would appear. The Abbey's communications director, Robert Harrison, moved between journalists, ensuring everyone understood the protocol for the day's events. Inside the Abbey's main hall, 150 specially invited guests took their seats on wooden chairs arranged in neat rows. The guest list represented a careful balance of local dignitaries, religious leaders, historians, and community volunteers who had contributed to preserving the Abbey's heritage. Lady Catherine Fairfax, the Abbey's chief patron and descendant of one of its original benefactors, sat in the front row wearing a navy blue dress and pearl necklace that had belonged to her grandmother. Dr. Jonathan Wright, a medieval historian from Oxford University who had spent 15 years researching the Abbey's archives, sat nearby, reviewing his notes one final time. He will be presenting a brief overview of the Abbey's historical significance during the ceremony. His hands shook slightly as he thumbed through pages documenting the Abbey's role in medieval scholarship, its survival during the Protestant Reformation, and its transformation into a center for community worship and cultural preservation. The Abbey's bell tower had been restored specifically for this anniversary, with craftsmen using traditional techniques to repair stonework damaged by centuries of weather and time. Master stonemason David Phillips had led the restoration project, working with a team of specialists to ensure every detail matched the original Norman architecture. We used the same limestone quarry that supplied stone for the original construction, he had explained to visitors during pre-anniversary tours. Margaret's radio crackled to life with an update from the security team. Royal convoy is 10 minutes out. All stations, please confirm final positions. She took a deep breath, knowing that months of planning would soon be put to the test. The Abbey staff had rehearsed every aspect of the visit multiple times, from the moment of arrival through the final departure. The Abbey's archives, housed in a climate-controlled room beneath the main structure, contain manuscripts and documents dating back to the Abbey's founding. Dr. Patricia Reynolds, the chief archivist, had selected several particularly significant items for display during the royal visit. Among them was the original charter granted by William the Conqueror, written in Latin on parchment that had somehow survived nearly 1,000 years of history. Local school children from 3 nearby villages had been chosen to present flowers to the Duchess, an honor that had caused considerable excitement among families throughout the region. 8-year-old Sophie Miller from Thornwick Primary School clutched her small bouquet of daisies and forget-me-nots, having practiced her curtsy countless times under her grandmother's watchful eye. The Abbey's gift shop, normally quiet except for weekend tourists, had been transformed into a reception area where guests would gather after the formal ceremony. Local businesses had donated refreshments, including homemade cakes from the village bakery and tea from the estate where the Abbey's original monks had once tended their gardens. Weather forecasts had predicted possible rain, but as the morning progressed, patches of blue sky began appearing between the clouds. Margaret considered this a positive omen, remembering her grandmother's saying that sunshine always blessed important occasions at the Abbey. Father O'Brien stood before the altar, adjusting his ceremonial vestments and silently rehearsing the prayers he would offer during the service. The Abbey's choir, composed of both adult and child voices from the surrounding communities, had spent weeks preparing a special arrangement of hymns and traditional songs that would showcase the building's remarkable acoustics. The final security sweep was completed just as the distant sound of helicopter rotors became audible above the Abbey grounds. Margaret felt her heart rate quicken as she realized the moment she had been planning for months was finally arriving. The 950-year legacy of St. Bartholomew's Abbey was about to welcome its most distinguished visitors in recent memory, continuing a tradition of hospitality and service that had defined this sacred place since the Norman conquest. The sleek burgundy Bentley carrying the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge glided through the Abbey's ancient stone gates at precisely 11:15, exactly as scheduled in the detailed itinerary that had been coordinated between Kensington Palace and the Abbey's organizing committee. Their Royal Highnesses had traveled from London following an early morning briefing about the Abbey's history and the significance of this milestone anniversary celebration. Catherine, the Duchess of Cambridge, wore an elegant royal blue coat dress designed by one of her favorite British designers, chosen specifically to complement the Abbey's medieval stonework. Her hair was styled in a classic chignon, and she carried a small clutch bag containing notes about the people she would meet and the various aspects of the Abbey's charitable work in the local community. Prince William, dressed in a charcoal gray suit with a navy blue tie, had spent the previous evening reviewing briefing documents about the Abbey's architectural features and its role in English ecclesiastical history. His private secretary had prepared detailed background information about key guests and the various community projects supported by the Abbey's Trust Fund. As their car approached the main entrance, both royals could see the crowd of well-wishers gathered behind security barriers, many waving flags and holding up homemade signs expressing their excitement about the visit. The Duke pointed out to his wife how many children were present, noting their colorful drawings depicting the Abbey's towers and the royal coat of arms. Detective Inspector Walsh spoke quietly into her radio as the royal vehicle came to a stop. Crown has arrived. All stations maintain positions. Her team had spent weeks coordinating with palace security to ensure seamless protection while allowing the maximum possible interaction between the royals and the gathered community members. Margaret Thompson stepped forward as the car doors opened, performing a respectful curtsy as she had practiced numerous times in her bedroom mirror. Your Royal Highnesses, welcome to St. Bartholomew's Abbey. We are deeply honored by your presence on this historic day. Her voice carried clearly despite her nervousness, and she was relieved when both the Duke and Duchess smiled warmly in response. Father O'Brien approached with measured steps, his ceremonial robes flowing gently in the morning breeze. Your Royal Highnesses, it is my profound privilege to welcome you to our Abbey community. Today we celebrate not just 950 years of continuous worship, but also the enduring connection between the sacred place and the people it has served across the centuries. The Duchess accepted a small posy of flowers from 8-year-old Sophie Miller, who managed her curtsy perfectly despite her obvious excitement. "These are beautiful, Sophie. Did you pick them yourself?" Catherine asked, crouching slightly to meet the child at eye level. The interaction was captured by photographers, but more importantly, it set a warm tone for the entire visit. Prince William engaged in conversation with Dr. Wright, the Oxford historian, expressing genuine interest in the Abbey's survival during Henry VIII's dissolution of monasteries. The fact that this community managed to preserve both the building and its spiritual mission through such turbulent times speaks to remarkable determination, the Duke observed, demonstrating his knowledge of English ecclesiastical history. The royal couple was then escorted through the Abbey's main entrance, where they paused to admire the Norman arches and Gothic additions that told the story of 9.5 centuries of architectural evolution. The Duchess commented on the quality of the recent restoration work, having been briefed about the traditional craftsmanship techniques used to preserve the medieval stonework. Lady Catherine Fairfax, representing the Abbey's patron family, presented the royal guests with a beautifully illustrated book documenting the Abbey's history through photographs, documents, and personal accounts from community members. This chronicles the stories of ordinary people whose lives have been touched by this extraordinary place, she explained, offering insight into how the Abbey had served as a constant presence through generations of social change. Inside the main chapel, the assembled guests rose as the royal couple entered, followed by a procession including local civic leaders and representatives from various charitable organizations supported by the Abbey. The ancient stone walls seemed to resonate with centuries of prayer and celebration as the formal service began. The Abbey's choir performed a specially commissioned anthem that wove together medieval chants with contemporary harmonies, showcasing both the building's historical roots and its continued relevance to modern worship. The acoustics, enhanced by the Abbey's stone construction, created an atmosphere that moved several guests to tears. Dr. Reynolds, the chief archivist, had the honor of showing their Royal Highnesses several precious manuscripts from the Abbey's collection, including illuminated prayer books created by monks during the medieval period. The Duke showed particular interest in a chronicle documenting the Abbey's role in providing sanctuary during the Wars of the Roses. Prince William delivered brief remarks acknowledging the Abbey's contributions to both spiritual life and community service throughout its long history. Institutions like St. Bartholomew's Abbey remind us that continuity and change can exist together, he observed. This building has adapted to serve each generation while maintaining its essential character and mission. The Duchess spoke with volunteers who maintained the Abbey's gardens, learning about efforts to cultivate plants mentioned in medieval herbalist texts found in the Abbey's archives. She expressed admiration for the integration of historical research with practical conservation work, noting how such projects connected contemporary visitors with the Abbey's past. Following the formal ceremony, the royal couple toured the Abbey's educational facilities, where local schools brought students to learn about medieval history, architecture, and religious traditions. They observed a demonstration of manuscript illumination techniques, with children attempting to recreate decorative lettering using traditional methods. The Duke and Duchess met with representatives from the Abbey's outreach programs, which provided support to elderly residents in surrounding villages and offered educational opportunities for disadvantaged youth. These contemporary social services continued a tradition of community care that had characterized the Abbey's mission since its founding. Master stonemason David Phillips explained the restoration techniques used to preserve the Abbey structure while meeting modern safety and accessibility requirements. The royal visitors showed genuine appreciation for the skilled craftsmanship required to maintain such an ancient building, asking detailed questions about the challenges of working with 9th-century-old stonework. As they moved through different areas of the Abbey complex, both the Duke and Duchess took time to speak individually with community members, asking about their connections to the Abbey and their experiences participating in its various programs. These personal interactions, though brief, left lasting impressions on the people fortunate enough to meet their future king and queen. The morning's events had proceeded flawlessly, with each element of the carefully planned schedule unfolding exactly as rehearsed. Margaret Thompson watched from the sidelines, feeling immense relief that her months of preparation were paying off, while simultaneously recognizing that the day held additional surprises that would test everyone's adaptability and grace under pressure. The afternoon program began with an unexpected discovery that would transform the day from a formal celebration into a moment of genuine historical significance. Dr. Patricia Reynolds, while preparing the archive display for the royal visit, had noticed an irregularity in one of the medieval stone blocks supporting a reading lectern in the manuscript room. Further investigation revealed a hidden compartment containing documents that had remained sealed for over 4 centuries. "Your Royal Highnesses," Dr. Reynolds announced with barely contained excitement, "we believe we have uncovered correspondence between the Abbey's last Catholic abbot and supporters of Mary Tudor during the religious upheavals of the 16th century. These letters appear to document secret efforts to preserve the Abbey's religious artifacts during the Protestant Reformation." Prince William and Catherine examined the carefully preserved documents, their historical significance immediately apparent to both royals given their knowledge of English ecclesiastical history. The letters, written in Latin with portions in coded English, revealed how the Abbey's leadership had hidden precious religious items and maintained underground Catholic worship even after Henry VIII's break with Rome. Father O'Brien studied the documents with amazement, realizing that his abbey had harbored secrets that fundamentally changed understanding of its survival through the Reformation. "This explains how we maintained our spiritual continuity," he mused. "Our predecessors were far more resourceful and brave than we ever imagined." The discovery created considerable excitement among the assembled historians and theologians, but also presented Margaret Thompson with an unexpected protocol challenge. Should the formal program continue as planned, or should they acknowledge this remarkable find that was unfolding before their distinguished guests? The Duke made the decision himself, expressing his desire to learn more about the documents and their implications for understanding English religious history. "This is precisely the kind of living history that makes places like St. Bartholomew's Abbey so valuable," he observed. "We're witnessing scholarship in action, uncovering truths that have waited centuries to be revealed." Dr. Wright, the Oxford historian, was summoned to provide expert analysis of the document's content and historical context. His examination revealed that the letters contained detailed instructions for preserving illuminated manuscripts, religious relics, and sacred vessels that were now housed in museums and private collections throughout England. These documents provide a roadmap to Abbey treasures that were thought lost forever, Dr. Wright explained to the royal couple. Some items described here may still exist in private collections, their original provenance unknown to current owners. This discovery could lead to reuniting the Abbey with artifacts from its medieval period. The Duchess showed particular interest in references to female benefactors who had secretly funded the Abbey's survival during dangerous periods of religious persecution. The letters revealed how women from noble families had used their social positions and financial resources to protect both the physical building and its spiritual community. Catherine engaged in detailed conversation with Dr. Reynolds about the role of women in preserving religious and cultural heritage during times of political upheaval. These women were taking enormous personal risks to preserve something they believed essential to their community's identity. the Duchess observed, connecting historical examples with contemporary conservation efforts. Meanwhile, news of the discovery had begun spreading beyond the Abbey grounds through social media posts by guests and journalists covering the anniversary celebration. Academic institutions across Europe expressed interest in studying the documents, recognizing their potential to reshape understanding of English Reformation history. The Abbey's afternoon program adapted seamlessly to incorporate discussion of the historic find. Local school children, initially planned to perform traditional songs, instead listened with rapt attention as historians explained how the discovery demonstrated the importance of preserving historical sites and supporting archaeological research. Professor Angela Hartwell from Cambridge University, who had arrived as a scheduled speaker, found herself completely revising her planned remarks about medieval manuscript preservation. The newly discovered letters provided concrete examples of techniques she had previously only theoretical knowledge about, bringing her academic research into direct contact with living history. The royal couple spent considerable time examining the hidden compartment where the documents had been concealed, marveling at the ingenuity of 16th-century Abbey residents who had created such an effective hiding place. The compartment's construction required considerable skill and knowledge of the building's architecture, suggesting collaboration between religious leaders and master craftsmen. Local television crews, initially focused on covering a routine royal visit, found themselves documenting a genuine archaeological breakthrough that would likely generate international scholarly interest. The story evolved from ceremonial coverage to investigative reporting as journalists recognized the significance of the discovery. Detective Inspector Walsh faced the additional challenge of securing what had become a crime scene of historical importance. The documents would require careful preservation and authentication, necessitating coordination with museum conservators and academic institutions while maintaining security protocol for the royal visit. The Duke asked thoughtful questions about modern conservation techniques being used to preserve the newly discovered documents, drawing connections between historical preservation challenges and contemporary efforts to maintain the Abbey's structural integrity. His engineering background enabled him to appreciate both the medieval building techniques and current restoration methods. As word of the discovery spread through the crowd outside the Abbey, the gathering took on a festival atmosphere. Local residents who had come simply to catch a glimpse of the royal couple found themselves witnessing a moment that would enter the Abbey's historical record alongside its founding, its survival through various political upheavals, and its adaptation to changing religious practices. Margaret Thompson realized that this anniversary celebration would be remembered not just for the royal visit, but for the extraordinary historical revelation that had occurred in the presence of such distinguished witnesses. The day was exceeding every expectation she had harbored during months of careful planning. The afternoon's events continued with renewed energy and enthusiasm, as guests understood they were participating in something far more significant than a routine ceremonial occasion. The Abbey's 950-year history had suddenly expanded with new chapters that would require years of scholarly research to fully understand and appreciate. Father O'Brien announced that the Abbey would establish a research fellowship to study the newly discovered documents and their implications for understanding English religious history. The royal couple enthusiastically endorsed this initiative, recognizing the importance of supporting academic research that could illuminate previously unknown aspects of the nation's spiritual and cultural heritage. The discovery transformed the anniversary celebration from a backward-looking commemoration into a forward-looking commitment to continued historical research and preservation. The Abbey's past and future had suddenly become intertwined in ways that none of the day's planners had anticipated, creating opportunities for scholarship and community engagement that would extend far beyond this milestone anniversary. As the afternoon progressed, the atmosphere at St. Bartholomew's Abbey had transformed from formal celebration to genuine community engagement, with the historical discovery serving as a catalyst for deeper conversations between the royal couple and local residents. The Duke and Duchess found themselves extending their visit well beyond the scheduled time frame, genuinely fascinated by the unfolding implications of the morning's archaeological breakthrough. Catherine spent considerable time with the Abbey's textile preservation group, elderly women who had volunteered their expertise to restore medieval vestments and altar cloths discovered in various storage areas throughout the building. Mrs. Dorothy Hartwell, an 87-year-old former seamstress, demonstrated traditional embroidery techniques that had been passed down through generations of local families. "My grandmother taught me these stitches when I was 7 years old," Mrs. Hartwell explained to the Duchess, her weathered hands moving with surprising precision as she worked on a delicate section of 14th-century silk. She learned them from her mother, who worked on church textiles during Queen Victoria's reign. "We're maintaining a continuous tradition that connects us directly to the women who created these pieces centuries ago." Prince William engaged with the Abbey's youth programs, speaking with teenagers who had been participating in archaeological workshops that taught them to identify and catalog historical artifacts. 17-year-old Marcus Thompson, Margaret's nephew, had discovered several medieval pottery fragments during a supervised excavation in the Abbey's vegetable garden. "The young people bring fresh eyes to our historical research," explained Professor Sarah Mitchell from the local university's archaeology department. "They're not burdened by preconceptions about what we might find, so they often notice things that experienced researchers might overlook. Their enthusiasm reminds us why this work matters for future generations." The discovery of the hidden documents had prompted Dr. Reynolds to contact colleagues at the British Museum and the Bodleian Library, initiating conversations about collaborative research projects that could shed new light on English Reformation history. The royal couple listened with evident interest as she described how modern technology could be used to analyze medieval texts without damaging fragile materials. "We can now use multispectral imaging to reveal text that has been deliberately obscured or damaged by time," Dr. Reynolds explained. "These techniques allow us to read documents that have been illegible for centuries, potentially uncovering additional secrets that the Abbey's medieval residents may have hidden for their protection." Father O'Brien had been quietly coordinating with church authorities throughout the afternoon, seeking guidance on the theological implications of the discovered correspondence. The letters revealed aspects of Catholic resistance during the Reformation that could influence modern understanding of English religious history and interfaith relations. The Duchess showed particular interest in the Abbey's community outreach programs, which provided practical support to families struggling with economic challenges. She met with social workers who used the Abbey's facilities to offer counseling services, educational support for children, and assistance with housing and employment issues. Faith communities have always played essential roles in supporting their neighbors during difficult times, Catherine observed during her conversation with community service coordinators. The Abbey's commitment to practical charity continues traditions that stretch back to its medieval origins, adapting ancient values to address contemporary needs. Local business owners who had supported the anniversary celebration found themselves in extended conversations with Prince William about economic development in rural areas and the challenges facing small communities in maintaining their cultural identity while adapting to modern economic realities. James Patterson, who owned the village pub that had served the Abbey community for over 2 centuries, described how tourism generated by the Abbey's historical significance helped sustain local businesses while creating opportunities for young people to remain in the area rather than moving to larger cities for employment. The Abbey's restoration projects had created apprenticeship opportunities for traditional craftsmen, connecting young people with master artisans who possess skills that have been passed down through generations. The Duke observed a demonstration of stone carving techniques being taught to teenagers who showed aptitude for working with their hands and interest in preserving historical buildings. "These skills represent living heritage," Prince William noted. "When we maintain traditional crafts, we're preserving not just techniques, but entire ways of understanding and interacting with our built environment. These young people are becoming custodians of knowledge that modern society desperately needs." The afternoon's informal conversations had revealed the Abbey's role as a catalyst for broader community development initiatives. Educational partnerships with local schools, collaboration with historical societies, and support for traditional arts and craft created a network of activities that strengthened social connections throughout the region. Dr. Wright used the royal visit as an opportunity to announce plans for an international conference on English Reformation history, to be hosted at the Abbey the following year. The newly discovered documents would serve as the centerpiece for scholarly presentations that could attract researchers from universities across Europe and North America. This abbey has become a focal point for cutting-edge historical research, Dr. Wright explained to the gathered media representatives. The combination of preserved architecture, extensive archives, and ongoing archaeological work creates unique opportunities for interdisciplinary scholarship that can advance our understanding of English cultural development. The royal couple's extended visit had created unexpected opportunities for community members to share their personal connections to the Abbey and its history. Local families brought out photograph albums, genealogical records, and family heirlooms that documented their ancestors' relationships with the Abbey across multiple generations. Mrs. Eleanor Davies, the elderly widow who had waited since early morning to see the royals, finally had her moment to present Catherine with a handwritten letter her grandmother had received from the Abbey's priest following her wedding in 1923. The letter, preserved in excellent condition, offered traditional marriage blessings and advice that had guided the family through nearly a century of changes. Your grandmother's words remind us that personal relationships and community connections are what give meaning to historical places, the Duchess responded, accepting the letter with evident emotion. Buildings may preserve our past, but people carry our values forward into the future. As the afternoon drew toward evening, it became clear that this anniversary celebration had evolved far beyond its original conception. The combination of royal recognition, historical discovery, and authentic community engagement had created a momentum that would continue long after the distinguished guests departed, setting the stage for the Abbey's next chapter in its remarkable 1,000-year journey. The evening conclusion of the Abbey's 950th anniversary celebration exceeded every expectation as the community gathered for a torchlit procession through the medieval cloisters, followed by a final blessing service that would mark the end of an extraordinary day. The Duke and Duchess had agreed to participate in this traditional ceremony, which had been conducted annually for over 6 centuries to honor the Abbey's founding and seek blessings for the year ahead. As twilight approached, local volunteers distributed handheld torches to everyone present, creating a warm glow that flickered against the ancient stone walls. The procession began in the main courtyard, with Father O'Brien leading a slow, dignified walk through corridors where countless generations had offered prayers and sought sanctuary during times of trouble and celebration alike. Catherine walked alongside elderly parishioners and young families, her presence transforming what could have been a purely ceremonial event into a moment of genuine spiritual significance. Children who had been excited about meeting royalty earlier in the day now seemed equally moved by the solemnity and beauty of the torchlight ceremony that connected them to centuries of Abbey tradition. Prince William engaged in quiet conversation with Dr. Wright about plans to establish an endowment fund that would support ongoing archaeological research and historical preservation at the Abbey. The royal couple had been so impressed by the day's discoveries and the community's commitment to maintaining their heritage that they wanted to ensure continued support for scholarly work. Today has demonstrated how historical preservation creates opportunities for discovery that can reshape our understanding of the past, the Duke observed. This Abbey deserves resources that will enable future generations of researchers to continue uncovering its secrets while maintaining its role as a living community center. Margaret Thompson walked near the rear of the procession, finally, allowing herself to feel satisfaction about the day's success while already beginning to contemplate the long-term implications of everything that had occurred. The anniversary celebration had generated international media coverage, academic interest, and royal endorsement that would transform the Abbey's profile and create new responsibilities for its small staff. The newly discovered documents had been carefully secured in climate-controlled storage, pending conservation work that would prepare them for scholarly analysis. Museums and universities from 3 countries had already expressed interest in collaborative research projects, promising years of academic activity that would keep the Abbey at the center of historical scholarship. Dr. Reynolds walked with her colleague, Professor Mitchell, discussing plans for digital preservation techniques that would make the Abbey's entire archive accessible to researchers worldwide. The royal visit had provided a platform for announcing these technological initiatives, which would position the Abbey as a leader in innovative approaches to historical research and public education. As the procession moved through the chapel where the day's formal service had taken place, participants reflected on how the morning's ceremonial atmosphere had evolved into something far more significant. The combination of royal recognition, archaeological discovery, and community celebration had created a perfect storm of positive attention that would benefit the Abbey for years to come. Father O'Brien offered the traditional blessing that had concluded anniversary celebrations for centuries, but added contemporary prayers acknowledging the day's special circumstances and expressing gratitude for the discoveries that had expanded understanding of the Abbey's history. His words resonated through stone corridors that had witnessed similar ceremonies during medieval times, creating a tangible connection between past and present. The torchlight service concluded in the main chapel, where the Abbey's choir performed one final hymn that showcased both the building's acoustic properties and the community's musical traditions. The Duke and Duchess joined in singing familiar verses, their participation symbolizing the harmony between royal tradition and grassroots religious practice that had characterized English spiritual life for centuries. As the formal program ended, many community members were reluctant to depart, sensing that they had witnessed something extraordinary that deserved additional reflection and celebration. Informal conversations continued in the Abbey's reception areas, where local families shared stories about their ancestors' connections to the Abbey while discussing hopes for its future development. The royal couple spent their final hour at the Abbey in private conversation with key staff members, offering personal thanks for the exceptional hospitality and expressing genuine enthusiasm about the historical discoveries that had made their visit so memorable. They committed to maintaining contact with Abbey leadership and supporting fundraising efforts that would enable expanded research and preservation activities. Prince William presented Father O'Brien with a personal letter from His Majesty the King, acknowledging the Abbey's contributions to English spiritual life and expressing royal appreciation for the community's dedication to preserving their remarkable heritage. The letter would be displayed permanently in the Abbey's museum, serving as a lasting reminder of the Crown's recognition and support. Catherine offered to serve as patron for the proposed research fellowship that would study the newly discovered documents, lending royal prestige to fundraising efforts while ensuring ongoing scholarly attention to the Abbey's historical significance. Her involvement would attract additional donors and academic partners who could support comprehensive investigation of the medieval correspondence. As their departure time approached, both royals took final moments to speak individually with community members who had made particular impressions during the day's events. They thanked the children who had performed so beautifully, acknowledged the volunteers whose efforts had made the celebration possible, and expressed admiration for the scholars whose dedication had enabled such remarkable discoveries. The royal convoy departed just as full darkness settled over the Abbey grounds, leaving behind a community transformed by their visit and energized by new possibilities for future development. The torches had been extinguished, but the warmth of the day's experiences would continue burning in memories and aspirations for years to come. Margaret Thompson stood in the empty courtyard after the last guests had departed, surrounded by the ancient stones that had witnessed nearly a millennium of human hopes and dreams. Today had added another extraordinary chapter to the Abbey's ongoing story, one that connected its medieval origins with contemporary royal recognition and future scholarly potential. The 950th anniversary celebration had exceeded every possible expectation, creating momentum for preservation efforts, research initiatives, and community development that would carry St. Bartholomew's Abbey confidently toward its 1000th anniversary. The day had proved that historical institutions could remain vibrantly relevant while honoring their deepest traditions, inspiring everyone present to continue the sacred work of preserving the past for future generations. As she locked the Abbey doors for the night, Margaret smiled, knowing that tomorrow would bring new challenges and opportunities created by this remarkable day's success. The Abbey's future had never looked brighter, supported by royal patronage, scholarly interest, and community commitment that would ensure its continued service to both historical understanding and spiritual life for centuries to come.